Okay, who is absent? There's just one person who's not present today. Okay, because there is some network difficulties which I'm facing. Please keep telling me which. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I'm just getting a message about bad network quality, and there seems to be some problem. Anyway, no issues. So, did I begin with historical ecology? I think I finished with historical ecology, and I also almost finished with applied ecology as well. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So far with the syllabus, any problems? I just wanted to know that if there are any issues with the syllabus and that you're facing any problems there. Anyone?
Ma'am, can we do a revision of historical ecology?
Okay, historical ecology. Okay, that we can do. It's very brief. What else other than that? Is there any other area in ecology that you're not able to understand, even if it is a generalized question? I'm willing to address it because more or less, as I told you last time, the syllabus is over. But there are few topics which, as per self work, I decided to give to you people. And even from that area, if you feel like there is a particular topic or there's a particular concern that you're not able to understand, let me know about that as well.
Ma'am, a small revision about Arcadian and scientific approach of man and nature interaction.
Okay, okay, all right. So these are two things. I can revise them today itself. Anything else from the rest of the class? Okay. Looks like there is no other concern that you people have. So let me just talk about, first of all, the Arcadian approaches, because that's really the entry point or the introduction of the various, theoretical ideas that you have studied. So let me just briefly tell you what it is in terms of the three divisions of schools of thought. Okay, now understand that in ecology, just give me a moment, just give me a moment. Yes, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So yes, I was just saying that with regard to the three schools of thought, we divided them into three approaches, and that is Arcadian approach, imperialist approach, and the scientific tradition. All right. Now, the only relevant idea here is to understand what would be man's position in nature, or what would be man's position aside from nature. How is it that people who are giving these theoretical idea, where are they keeping man? So when you talk about, say, political ecology, then you are talking about man in a particular manner. When you are talking about historical ecology, you are talking about man in a particular position. In the same manner, when you are talking about, let's just say, the most early form, like cultural determinism or culture area, where are you keeping man? So the position of the man is actually the relevant. So by man I mean human beings. That is the relevant idea behind this particular theme altogether. If man is completely trying to control nature, then obviously it falls under imperialist tradition. Some of the earliest ideologies were about promoting this approach, where the imperialist tradition considered humans to be superior and capable of holding a dominant position over nature. Now, obviously, this particular tradition gained, more significance with the coming of industrial revolution and with the popularization of industrial ideology in the eastern part of the world. So western culture's expansion across the globe, especially in the eastern part of the world, gave rise to this idea where they believed, where the theorists believe that you can actually dominate nature. Okay. And that was the tradition of ecological imperialism. Even today, when you look at how governments across the world, you know uh, take decisions and take policy level measures, there is an imperialist outlook. They feel that their decisions actually will have an impact on the ecology. If that were the case, then they would not have been brought to their knees with a pandemic. So as you can understand, the preparedness of government in various emergency measures was not there, especially in a pandemic like situation. And generally this happens in history. There are historical accounts of this kind of situations, and these are long standing conditions which affect the environment rather severely. And it is something that has happened in a cyclical manner, but the imperialist tradition is something which the government is guided by. The next is the Arcadian tradition. The Arcadian tradition, as I told you, is based on the Greek myth of the Vale of Arcady, which is right now a very poor, dry, arid region. But according to the Greeks, the Vale of Arcady once upon a time was one of the most beautiful and one of the most naturally endowed place. And it was after the interference of human beings that this place became so, you can say, arid, and so, uh, let's just say, uh, non-prosperous. And it is because of this Arcadian tradition was promoted, which advocated that human beings should live in satisfaction, harmony, and in contentment with nature. Whatever nature gives, you should just take it and accept it. That is the Arcadian approach. The third tradition is the scientific tradition. The scientific tradition is equally relevant. I just want to point out that all three. be it the imperialist tradition, be it the scientific tradition, or the Arcadian tradition. All three traditions actually seem to have coexisted from the time man understood, human beings understood ecology and the relevance of ecology. So now the last is obviously the scientific tradition, again something which was popularized by the Greek ideology, but obviously the cause and effect relationship was very faulty. Now the scientific tradition, one of the earliest scientific theories with regard to culture and environment, as I told you, was propagated by the Greeks. The Greeks said that people in the warm climate, you know, were perfect, but the people who were in from hot climate were listless and lazy, and people from cold climate were stupid. So this was something which, according to the Greeks, justified their position as extremely intelligent and perfect community to rule the world. So it justified their position, and at the same time they called it a scientific theory, even though today it seems that this theory has absolutely no validity. Okay, so is it clear with regard to scientific Arcadian and imperialist tradition?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now we come to the next question, which is historical. Okay? Now, please remember that historical ecology is something that says that uh, Earth as a planet, as a ecological surrounding, has undergone several significant changes. Sometimes these changes have been for the good, and sometimes these changes have been for the worse. Okay. Now, the historical ecology project is something which was uh, promoted in Florida, and it was something which was very close to the field of environmental history, cultural geography, and other fields of history. Uh, it's something which is a blend of several fields of history, geography, geology, etc. The specific idea of historical ecology talks about how humans and their interaction with the environment has led to several significant changes in the environment. Okay, and it is always uh, not in a deteriorative manner, but it is also sometimes in the constructive manner that human beings have changed the face of Earth. Uh, a cultural ecologist, Bailey, who was the person who promoted the idea of historical ecology in the late 1990s, came up with four arguments. One was that human activity has affected all the environments. Only those environments where human beings have been unable to reach may have been protected, but again, you don't know whether they have been protected or not from human interference, because I was watching a particular documentary on ecology only long time back, and I remember coming across a particular island um, somewhere in the Indian Ocean, and this particular island is an abandoned island, and it was very beautiful. And people said that this place you shouldn't go because this particular place had a mushroom cloud. Do you know what is a mushroom cloud?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it? Can you tell the rest of the class?
I can't exactly explain the technical terms, but like I know that after these big explosions due to that change in pressure and all. It forms a mushroom-like cloud. Like then, uh, it it goes up. The
It's
smoke goes.
generally a result of nuclear
Yeah,
explosion.
nuclear
Always
explosion, or
remember that.
even I think volcanoes also form mushroom clouds.
Not that significantly. No, not that significantly. The effect is most commonly seen in case of nuclear explosion. Most commonly, and it leads to the release of a lot of debris, and the debris is generally radioactive in nature. So it is for this reason that mushroom cloud is almost always associated with atomic bombing, and yes, it is formed in case of volcanic eruptions as well. But in case of volcanic eruption, it's more short-lived. First of all, second, the lava that is released is not does not go up, so it's more of a fume-based mushroom cloud where the trunk of the tree, trunk of the mushroom is actually very small compared to the actual literal mushroom cloud which is formed with a radioactive explosion. In fact, this explosion that took place few months back in, I think, where was it? Beirut? Was it Beirut or somewhere else?
Yes, ma'am, Beirut.
Yeah, there was an explosion, and that was, by the way, a sorry, a mushroom cloud explosion. So a lot of people, uh, you know, did not know whether or not it released a lot of radioactive substances or not. But generally, when a nuclear explosion, it is it results it's most commonly results in mushroom clouds. And so I was telling you about this particular island, and this particular island is beautiful and pristine, but it is still considered one of the most dangerous places on the Indian Ocean to go and visit. But if you'll see it from a distance, you won't even realize that it is dangerous, or it is advised that you don't go there. But in general, that place looks absolutely pristine. If you look at it, you'll be like, no human has ever been to that place, and it is probably you first as an individual who has explored it. But when you go closer, that is when you realize that this island has been abandoned, and this island actually has several, cellars that have been sealed by the US Army after they used it for testing explosions and explosives of specific variety that traveled to very far distances on the sea and had resulted in several chronic skin disorders for several tribal zones in the region. So, as a result of that, it was realized that this particular kind of ecological disturbance can be a single alteration of cutting a tree or planting a tree, or this kind of a you know situation. I don't know whether it was your class or whether it was some other class. I had talked to all of you about the Chernobyl disaster. uh, if you remember, was it your class?
No, ma'am.
Ma'am, no.
Okay. So this particular radioactive leakage that happened, and the nuclear activity, which was very severe in the Chernobyl area, it was, I think, quite next to literally Western Europe. And just a minute. And it resulted in absolute abandonment of the place. Now, interestingly, what happened was it was completely abandoned. This place was considered so hazardous for people. It was a nuclear disaster, and this happened when a nuclear reactor went out of control and the radiation limits were crossed. Um I think there was a series also that was going on. It was a TV mini series on Netflix or somewhere. I can't possibly tell you.
Hotstar.
Yeah,
It's
somewhere
on
I think.
Hotstar.
Yeah, it was too bleak a reminder. I didn't feel like watching it. But I'm just telling you that it was a place that had been abandoned, and interestingly, that the sites that had been abandoned remained the same. And after a few years, after around 2 or 3 decades, the ecology actually recovered. Okay, ecology recovered. But then, when the scientists went there, the scientists who are working in radioactive zones, they generally carry a radioactive radar, which gives them the exposure, um, you know, levels. Okay, and it is very interesting that even today, Chernobyl as a place does not have uh, radioactive activity fit for humans. It is still beyond, the capacity of human. Okay, but at the same time, what has happened is that the rest of the biodiversity post the nuclear explosion has recovered. And now, interestingly, when you are allowed to go to the site now in the erstwhile Soviet Union, you're allowed to go to the site now. And when you go to the site, there's a particular time duration to which your body can take the exposure, and after that you have to return. Otherwise, you'll develop some or the other radioactive activity related disorder in your body, which can lead up to cancer and stuff like that. So it's fatal. So they have some exposure limits and they don't allow you to go. It's a health advisory that has been released for the rest of the world. Now, what I was trying to tell you is that when this happened, after that, when botanists and zoologists have gone to this area, uh, they realize that the birds and the animals that have come back, they have high levels of radioactive substances in them, but apparently their body has been able to cope up with that kind of exposure. Human beings were not built to cope up with that kind of exposure, but the biodiversity has been able to cope up with it, other than human beings. And therefore, they have been able to sort of, how do I say, they've been able to restore the ecology. But does that in any way uh, change the fact that this explosion happened? Yes. Do you think if today you go, you'll realize that the birds and the bees have returned? But does that change anything with regard to the fact that the landscape has been changed forever? Or I'll just a moment, I'll show you. It's a 5 clip. It's very interesting. Just watch it and let me know what do you think about it. Is it visible to all
All
of you?
right. Well, it looks like a nice.
Is it visible and audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Spider web over here. Let's see if we can't catch this on film. We missed it up a little bit. You know, what was invisible now becomes visible. Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. Yep. Yeah, this one's sitting in being bathed in about 45 microsieverts per hour, plus or minus, which is pretty darn radioactive.
In 1986, an explosion and fire at the nuclear reactor in what was then the Soviet Union in Chernobyl, Ukraine, launched a plume of radioactive fallout that rendered a large swath of the region here uninhabitable. Since then, the creation of a 1,000 square mile exclusion zone prohibiting human activity has led some to declare the area a restored Eden, brimming with wildlife. But for more than a decade, Timothy Mousseau, an American scientist, has conducted an extensive biological survey here, and his studies have shown that life has been far more slow to recover than previously believed.
So it's a perfect area for biological studies because we see a diversity of plants and animals. It's one of the hotter areas in the Chernobyl zone. And so from our previous work, we know that this level of chronic exposure is above that most species will tolerate. This year we've been looking at the small rodents, we've been looking at spiders. Earlier this year we were here working with the birds. We found that the abundance of many species of birds are depressed in these areas of high contamination, leading to an overall decrease in the biodiversity on the order of 50% fewer species in hot areas than there should be if there wasn't radioactivity in the area.
Mousseau says he has seen much higher frequencies of tumors and physical abnormalities, like deformed beaks among birds, compared with those from uncontaminated areas. He has measured declines in populations of insects and spiders, and yet in a recent paper released last month, Mousseau has also shown that some birds here may actually be adapting to high radiation levels.
So these are special digital audio recorders that are designed to pick up the high frequency sounds that bats produce while they're echolocating and flying around and trying to capture insects. And by the frequency of calls, we can get an idea of the abundance of bats. Yeah, look at these mushrooms here. Let's see if it goes up. Well, look at that, eh? Oh, 43. So 42, 43. So, yeah, this mushroom is definitely much hotter than the surrounding areas.
The legacy of Chernobyl, Mousseau says, can be seen not just in animal life. Cut trees here show a dramatic change in the color of their rings, exactly in 1986.
It occurred to us after visiting Fukushima last year that some of the spider webs looked a little strange. And so we thought we would test that hypothesis in a very scientific way by capturing images of as many spider webs as we can find in hot and cold areas of the same kinds of species to see if there's more variability or less structure to the webs in these radioactive areas. It could serve as a biomarker of the background radiation. We're in the town of Chernobyl, downtown Chernobyl as it were, and what we found is that the frequency of aberrant color patterns on the back sides of these bugs is directly proportional to how radioactive the area is. The one on this side is relatively normal, and then you look on the other one and you see that the black spots are kind of fused together. Thank you.
Mousseau's work in Chernobyl will continue for years to come. He's extended his study to Fukushima, Japan, and hopes to shed a brighter light on the lasting effects of radiation on biological systems, including humans.
Okay, so you can read more about the Chernobyl disaster, and it was a significant historical event, and it was just like what we know about the Bhopal gas tragedy, which happened just a year before the Chernobyl disaster, or 2 years before the Chernobyl disaster, and you realize that these activities may have led to the abandonment of an eco zone. Um, by the human population, but at the same time this has allowed for the biodiversity other than human beings to prosper in the area, but at the same time this prosperity has come with a cost, and the cost has been that this particular area has recovered, but as you can see, there are evidences of human activity even on the biodiversity after they have abandoned. So, the four arguments that were propounded by Bailey primarily focused on how human activity has affected virtually all environments, how human activity does not always necessarily degrade the environment, it can sometimes improve the environment, but obviously you don't come to know about the improvements as much as the deteriorative effects. The reason for that is that deterioration is far more visible because it's generally in the areas where humans continue to live where you can see the deterioration. On the other hand, if you look at the places that have had improvement, it's only because the human beings have moved or limited or curbed their activity, and therefore you're not always there to record those improvements. Now, the third thing that Bailey talked about, was different cultural systems have different impacts on the environment. So you all the time keep asking me one thing, that how does one relate ecology with say economic activities. So just one very simple example is that when first world countries shifted their production units to the third world, obviously the first world countries got an opportunity to reconstruct and reestablish and re-strengthen their environment. On the other hand, they did not. uh,
Ma'am got disconnected for
yeah,
everyone, right?
Yeah,
Got cut.
no, I'm back now.
Okay.
Yeah, I got briefly disconnected. So I was just saying that what happens is that when you look at these aspects, then you realize that the activities that have happened um, also vary from culture to culture. So when the first world countries initially were the production sites for, were the production sites for their own manufacturing units and for their own consumption, they were the ones that were getting polluted. Their ecology was the one that was getting polluted. So, with the coming of globalization, you really realize that the production unit and the manufacturing units shifted to the third world, and that is when the actual decline of the ecology took place, because obviously the manufacturing and the industrial units required to expand in the area, and it had an impact not just on the policy, but it also had impacts, and significant ones, I must say, on the let's just say on the um, third world countries' ecology and biodiversity. Okay, so it is for this reason that with each step towards development, if you are not cognizant about how uh, effective it is going to be and how deteriorative it is going to be for the ecology, that you realize that you have a significant impact on the environment. And the fourth argument of historical ecology was human interaction with the environment can be a complete phenomena, can be understood as a complete phenomena, because as we say, man affects environment and then environment affects man. So it is a continuous process, it is a continuous phenomena. You cannot you cannot possibly study man in isolation from the environment, and environment in isolation from human beings interference. Okay, so this is what is historical ecology all about. Yes, so I hope this aspect of historical ecology is clear to you, Jay.
Yes,
Yeah. Are there any other questions that you have with regard to um, ecology.
Ma'am, it's not a question. Like I would like to listen to your view on. Um, Ma'am, like when we say that nuclear about nuclear energy and nuclear energy generation, ma'am, what are your views on that? Because I think, ma'am, nuclear energy is the best way to go for future, ma'am. Even today, it's better than coal. It takes less time than a wind and solar energy.
Absolutely. See, one of the things that we need to understand is um, we have been part of development in many ways, and we have made some significant development in every field. In fact, when it comes to nuclear energy, India historically, and I mean even historically in the pre-Vedic times, Indians were able to harness nuclear energy before anybody in the world. And then came the world of Islamic scientists. Actually, the Western scientists, as you know them today, are the last of the people who discovered nuclear energy. But then, why is it that there was no nuclear spillage in those times? The reason for that is that we really need to be conscious of the protocols that we follow. The safety protocols are probably the most important aspects of setting up these reactors. It is inevitable that our resource need is going to increase with the increasing population. Okay, but how is that increasing population going to you know take care of its health? Because as you must have seen, I showed you this 5 minutes clip, and as you must have realized that the birds and the insects, everyone is able to survive. It's not that, but they do have some tumors and they do have some erratic behavior. But at the same time, their tenacity to the exposure of nuclear radiation is far greater than human beings. Human beings have not been able to develop that kind of um, you know reaction to this kind of exposure. So, keeping that in mind, when we set up a nuclear reactor, like Japan for that matter, Japan is such a proactive country. They are so proactive in their protocols that they will set up buildings, they will set up nuclear reactors. And these nuclear reactors and these buildings would all be earthquake safe. Now, if a country that is as a culture also, I can tell you from personal experience. I've seen how they behave. I've seen how they interact, and they are the kind of people who ideally will not face any health hazards until unless they are careless. Even then, even with that kind of proactive behavior, Fukushima did happen 10 years back. We don't know the impact even today. As I'm telling you, it's been close to 34 years for Chernobyl. Even today, the exposure, the radioactive exposure, and the zones in which radioactive exposure is there is so high that no human should ideally be going there. Now, the scientist, the zoologist, cum botanist who has been going there, this person probably is risking his life for research, but this is a fact. So, when nuclear reactors are set up, if they are set up following all safety protocols, then in that case, chances of any debilitating effect is going to be very less. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
My whole point is that I'm not opposed to the idea of nuclear reactors. I'm not opposed to the idea of any other alternative kind of fuels. Okay. But what I am opposed to is the fact that how easy it is for people to not have a sense of forethought, a sense of forewarning. Like uh, the other day, I was just discussing with my parents only about how airlines, airports have been made so much near to the city that if there is any kind of air disaster, it's not just the flight people that are going to lose their life, but it is also the people living in the surrounding area.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's just that, it's just this particular idea, which is which is a matter of concern. So I was just comparing various cities and their airport position, and then I realized that the closer it is to the city, the more chances are there of casualty. So keeping all of that in mind, protocol is very important. Safety protocol is very, very important. So that's my only thing. And you need to take into consideration the ecology. um, for that matter, when this पोखरण test happened, people will say तो मतलब अब हम missile test भी नहीं करेंगे. बिल्कुल, you can do missile testing. You should, if you think missile testing is the way forward and is the marker of development, then yes, you should do it. But at the same time, look at the impact it had on the ecology of the area, and the villages in the surrounding area did not have any warning when Pokhran testing was supposed to take place. The same happened in Kargil. When the Kargil war took place, it took around 30 years. No, uh, 28 or 26 years, after which the biodiversity returned to that zone. Okay, so it was, I think, 4 5 years back that I saw in the newspaper and in a documentary how uh, the Himalayan brown bear returned after 20 years or 26 years of Kargil war. So not 26. Kargil war happened in 1999. So no, it's 16 or 18 years later that they decided. So imagine how much of fear human activity can instill in its biodiversity. Plants behave strangely, animals behave strangely, and in the long run, this has an impact on the human society the most. Okay, so that's all I wanted to point out to your comment or your you know idea. So yes, nuclear energy is the way forward because it doesn't harm the fossil fuel store that earth already has, but at the same time we really need to do a cost analysis of input versus output. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions, everyone?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
No,
Okay, then I'll stop here. And from Monday onwards, please be sure to be ready with your presentations. Also, I'll just quickly take your attendance. Um, Abantika, please turn on your video. Then Akshat, Ankur,
Present, ma'am.
Ankur, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Dipanshi,
Am I visible?
yes, you are. Yes, okay. Uh,
Ma'am, am I
Divya,
visible?
yes, yes. Abantika, you are. Okay, Divya, and then Georgian, Ishita. Yes,
Present,
Ishita is
ma'am.
visible. Um,
Present, ma'am.
Georgian.
My camera takes a bit of time.
No, no issues. Because it's recording, so as long as it's recording, no issues. Jay and Karan. Okay. Neha, Priyanka.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, am I visible?
Yes, you are. Okay. Ritika and Samaksh.
Present, ma'am.
Okay. Vasundhara, Vipul, and Vishnu.
Present, ma'am.
Ma'am, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Present,
So
ma'am.
thank you. Thank you, everyone. Um, yes. So I was just saying that be ready with your presentation. I will randomly take the names of people. So you've already sent your presentations to me. However, just something, always add your personal insights. Like Ankur just now asked a question, which is a matter of personal understanding in terms of ecology. So one should not think that personal insights cannot be added to it. Okay, so keep that in mind, and then you should be able to present it in 5 to 6 minutes. Okay, so I'm stopping here, everyone, and we meet on Monday. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.